This is that game. And I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of this, but I think there's so many issues with BYU right now that I think this is that game where you point to and you say, is this the game that defines your season? And that may seem dramatic, that may seem over the top, but hear me out. You lost, and you lost ugly to Boise. And a lot of people just flipped off the BYU football switch and were like, all right, time to get ready for snowboarding. I'm telling you, the season's not over. Everything you want is right in front of you. You just have to win games. And that starts this weekend at Baylor. And Jake, I wonder your thoughts. BYU, a 6-point dog on the road. The number is only 50.5. I wonder your thoughts about what's left to play for BYU.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to play for. You know, it is unfortunate they did lose to Boise because I really do think that that's going to make their life difficult in terms of getting into the college football playoff. But I do still think you can play for a major bowl, and I certainly think that if you're a football team, you're not going to sit here and say that the season's over halfway through. Are you going to be able to get to the pinnacle of the sport? Probably not. Are you going to be able to get to a major bowl? Yeah, definitely. You know, and so that's what I think they have to play for. But I also think if you're Kalani and that coaching staff behind the scenes, you've been doing all this recruiting. You know, you've really been kicking ass in that department, and I think, you know, if you were to, you know, end this season with 8 wins, let's say, instead of 10, I think that'd be a real crying shame. You know, I think that would be a situation where, you know, you left stuff on the table this year. And I think you have my point is you have all this momentum in recruiting. You had all this momentum on the field before the Boise State game. Now you just need to go and get that back. And the other thing that I think is important in this game is being that they're on the road. You know, BYU hasn't played a lot of road football yet. They really haven't gone on the road much and done anything. So I'll be really curious to see how this turns out for them, because I think you have a QB situation that's kind of up in the air still. You're getting a lot of guys back this week. You know, LaChance is going to be back, and several other guys who were injured against Boise will be back this week. So you should theoretically be pretty healthy, pretty much, you know, full go for most guys. So I don't know. I just think in terms of momentum and where you're at as a team, this is a huge game. And yeah, it would help if you could beat Baylor on the road for strength of schedule purposes. Because as we talked about all year long, this schedule isn't exactly loaded with P5 talent. You know, you gotta go and look on this schedule like, all right, what's the big win? Well, right now, if Utah can beat ASU this weekend, it's going to be Utah. Right? But other than that, there's not much left. So Baylor, for that purpose, is also a huge game. So that's what I think they had to play for.
You know, the bummer is the Pac-12 is so mediocre right now.
Yeah.
That you're really struggling, in my opinion anyways, you're really struggling for strength of schedule. And that's something that obviously BYU's going to need when you lose to a team like Boise and you do it ugly, turning the ball over, which you hadn't been doing. You know, it just puts you in a position now where you need help outside of you winning the rest of your games. BYU needs help to get to a New Year's Six Bowl. And unfortunately, you know, you have teams like Utah and BYU that are running into each other, or Utah and ASU, excuse me, that are running into each other who you've beaten both of them. So one of them is going to have another loss, which is not going to help you. I mean, you really need Boise State to go on and win big games, because I don't know that winning out on its own is going to help BYU get to their bowl aspirations.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe that the college football playoff is done. Are you 90% done? Sure you are. But based on what we've seen in college football this year and the fact that so many teams have lost, and that you're looking at fresh blood in the playoff, and that fresh blood is likely not going to be undefeated unless Georgia somehow, you know, navigates the shark-filled waters of the SEC, you have an opportunity. But that starts in Waco tomorrow afternoon. And I think one of the things that's really critical here is you've got to settle this quarterback position at BYU. And I know that there's a lot of people that are upset that, you know, Baylor Romney is even being talked about as somebody who should be starting. But I think it's hard to ignore what we saw from Jaren Hall last week. Sure, he threw for 300 yards. Does he deserve to lose his job? No, he probably does not. He has not played poorly, if you will. But what are you not putting on the field with Baylor Romney on the sideline? It's not that Jaren Hall has played poorly. It's the skill set that Baylor Romney has. It's that big play over the top ability that Jaren Hall just does not offer you. And furthermore, if he's not healthy enough to run, and you can't tell me a guy is going to go from -3 yards and not running at all to running all over the field against Baylor. I don't see that happening. If Jaren Hall can't run, he's an average quarterback. But I don't think Jakey deserves to lose his job at this point.
No, I don't think it's a situation where he's played so poorly that he deserves to lose his job. But I think that's not the conversation. The conversation is, how much better can we be with Baylor on the field? And I think in college football, specifically for BYU, when they have the dynamic, that Baylor brings, which is the defense has to respect the deep ball, it really helps everybody else. And so to me, I like Jaren a lot. I like that he's dual threat. I like what he can do on the ground. I do. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me to say that I would start Jaren over Baylor if I want to go and win a national championship. That's the thing. It's not that Jaren's a bad player, but I look at what Baylor Romney is capable of doing. He doesn't need to run to get the job done, right? Like he can a little bit. We've seen him do that.
Right.
But when it's Romney on Romney crime and it's, the Nakua brothers getting loose in the secondary, that's a lot of fun to watch. And then all of a sudden, you once you get the passing game going, now you have a guy in Tyler Algier who's going to be the hammer, when you're handing it off. And so I just think that, it's not that Jaren sucks or Jaren's a bad guy, but I just think with what we've seen from Baylor, I don't know how we can even dispute the fact that they're a better team when he's on the field. That's the trouble, So, and I think we do this in sports too a lot, where we'll be like, hey, because the backup is better, the guy filling the backup role is better. That means the guy who's starting sucks, and it's really not that. It's not. It doesn't have almost anything to do with Jaren not being good. It just has more to do with the fact that Baylor's skill set allows BYU to go further and do more. And so to me, based on everything I've read this week and based on, what we're hearing and not hearing, frankly, because that's kind of how it works at BYU. What you don't hear is kind of almost as important as what you do hear, right? Based on what I've heard, it seems like, Jaren is going to start, but it seems like the leash is going to be pretty short. If they're not moving the football, if the offense isn't in good flow, don't be surprised if you see a Baylor Romney appearance in this game. And that's the way it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you have to have the courage as a coaching staff to play the guy who gives you a chance to win the game. And I'm not saying that Jaren should even be on a short leash. What I'm saying is Baylor Romney has to be an option. He has to be a guy. Furthermore, I don't even know that Jaren Hall is going to be able to stay healthy for the rest of the season. They've got still several key critical matchups coming, including Broncos return to Provo. Jaren Hall's a guy that's got to prove that he can play really 9 games a year and stay healthy doing it. And I don't know that he can do that. He's never shown the ability to do that. So I think we're going to see Baylor Romney again for BYU. It's a matter of when, not if, in my opinion, because I think you also get yourself into these positions where, it's almost a bad thing if you're talking about the backup quarterback. And in this case, I kind of agree that it's not ideal. It would have been great if Jaren Hall would have come out, stayed healthy, and been a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. And it's not happened in the past, and my guess is it won't happen in the future. But the good news is you've built depth into the program. What good is depth if you're not going to use it? And I know it takes courage, and I know it's a big move, but I'm telling you, if Jaren goes down again and Baylor comes in and plays well and throws deep and shows you that he can be a franchise-level quarterback for the BYU Cougars, I think you have to play him on a consistent basis.
You do. And you said something there. You have to play the guy that gives you the chance to win the game. I like to phrase that personally is you got to play the guy that clearly gives you the best chance to win the game. You have to play the guy that the rest of the team can get behind. Because let's not forget what we saw last week, right? I don't want people to forget about this. Last week when Kalani Sitake ran out a 50% Jaren Hall onto the field instead of running out the rook, if you will, in Jacob Conover, what did we see? We saw guys trying to do too much. We saw guys not believing that their quarterback who was injured, right? It's nothing personal against Jaren, but the fact is you were injured, and everybody knew it. So what did we see? Guys trying to do too much, guys trying to make plays they don't normally make. And so to me, I'm just like, all right, overall, when you think about the injuries that both of these guys have sustained, for long term and for the rest of the season, that kind of outlook, I
Yeah.
would think that Baylor Romney's injury, which is a concussion or what was a concussion,
Yeah.
is probably going to allow him to be in a better position in the long term than bruised or broken ribs, a labrum rotator cuff issue for Jaren. So that's why I just say you're going to Waco to play Baylor. This is not Stony Brook you're playing. This is a good team, and you have a lot on the line.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of 7 P5 teams on your schedule.
Yeah.
And you need to go 7-0 against those teams. I mean, it's really unfortunate that Boise game played out the way it did, but you can't go back and undo it. And at this point, my mind is that Jaren Hall has to be the same guy throwing the football this week that he was last week. And it's really critical that he not turn the football over. But it's also really critical that he has the ability to run the football. Because if Jaren doesn't have the ability to run the football, I think you have to look elsewhere. And you know what the other thing is? This defense is going to have to stand up against Baylor. Because I think Baylor does a decent job taking the football away, but BYU's defense has to do a better job creating turnovers.
Yeah.
The secondary has to do a better job creating turnovers. You know what? And the other real critical stat in this game is third down efficiency for Baylor. BYU's defense has to get off the field on third down. That much is very clear. I think Dave Aranda's done a very nice job building Baylor's defense. They do very well getting off the field. I think they are the most efficient passing defense in the Big 12. So I think it's one of those things that you're going to have to see what BYU can do to avoid mistakes and get off the field on third down. I know I've said this repeatedly, and you're probably tired of hearing me say it. I'm really worried about that secondary for BYU.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the secondary hasn't exactly shown consistency this year, and it's not that the defense as a whole has been bad, but I think when we look at BYU just overall in the big picture, I think we can confidently say that the line play on both sides of the ball has been pretty darn good. You've been in a good place with the offense and defensive line. I think the issue for BYU's defense is the way they go about it. It's the mentality with which they play. You're essentially begging teams to throw a bunch of intermediate routes, and what that requires of you then is to be disciplined with your tackling. And so when we're seeing missed tackles and we're seeing bad defensive play out of BYU, I mean, what do you expect, right? You're going to give up points. And so in this game, I think not only does this game serve as one of the most important on your schedule, but it also serves as a great measuring stick for where both sides of the ball are for BYU. Because Baylor is talented and they're a good team, they're going to test you. And by the way, with you being on the road for basically the first time all year, it is a big deal that you go to Waco and you show that you are prepared. That Boise State was a fluke.
Well, and I think Jeff Grimes obviously is a big talking point this week. Former BYU offensive coordinator. Obviously, he and Kalani are very close. He's now the offensive coordinator at Baylor. He went home to take this job, and I think what he's done with Jerry Bohannon is he's turned a quarterback into a guy that's very efficient with the football. 11-0 touchdown interception ratio. Well, that's pretty good. So that's why I say I worry about this secondary a little bit, and I worry about the BYU secondary's ability to create turnovers. I mean, when the other thing you look at is Abram Smith and Treston Ebner are averaging 6.9 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a lot. Now, this BYU defensive front is very good against the run, in my opinion. I think the linebackers are fast. They gap fill well. I think BYU's defense is going to hold up. I think it's going to be very difficult for Baylor to get big plays against on the run against BYU's defense. I think these things are all really critical points, but BYU cannot turn the football over. And BYU's coming off of a loss that I would think is motivating for that club. I mean, when you look at what happened here, I think BYU has a point to prove. This is no longer a team that's just trying to become bowl eligible. Both these clubs are going to be bowl eligible. There's no doubt about that. You're trying to prove that you can play quality football. And I think that's a question right now for BYU. There's a lot of people wondering, was what happened before Boise a fluke, or was what happened with Boise a fluke?
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you what happened with Boise's a fluke. This is a good football team. This is a quality football team that's very well coached. Ball security is not something that I worry about with Kalani Sitake coach teams. It's not. I think that they are well coached. I think A-Rod's got this offense right where it needs to be. My only concern on offense is Jaren Hall and his ability to be mobile and win the game with his legs. I mean, I think when you look at what BYU has ahead of them, I mean, Washington State, Virginia, Georgia Southern, and USC, I mean, that's a ball-breaking schedule. They have a lot to prove. This is a critical game, and my guess is they show up, Jake.
Yeah, I think they'll show up, and I think the schedule is, yeah, I mean, from here it's definitely not easy. You know, the Virginia game is nothing to play with. Obviously, this game is nothing to play with, and I would really hope that they're a one-loss team headed to USC, because if that's the case, we're going to have a lot to talk about on this show that week. You know, and
Yeah.
I just think that this whole quarterback situation, like if we take a step back and we kind of look at this from like a bigger picture perspective, this whole quarterback situation needs to get settled this week. Like I feel like Jaren is either going to come out in the first quarter and establish himself and say, "Hey, this is my team. We're moving this football. Like everything's good, right? We look good doing it." Or he's going to come out. He's going to try and do too much. He's going to turn the football over,
Yeah.
and it's going to be Baylor's team. So I just think that they got to get that figured out. I'm not a big fan of the not being definitive on who the starter thing is, because Kalani was specifically asked, "What's it looking like?" And he said, "Everyone's practicing, and we'll make a game time decision." So I don't love that.
No, I don't like that either. I think, I mean, it's very clearly Jaren Hall. It'd be shocking.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's interesting is how much the BYU program has closed ranks. There's not a whole lot of information coming out of Provo these days.
Yeah.
And the first month of the season, frankly, it was not hard to get news. They're playing it pretty tight, and they should. When I look at this game again, the numbers -6 in favor of Baylor.
Yeah.
50.5 is the number, and I think this is going to be one of the closest games of the year. Unfortunately, I think I have to take Baylor, and it's going to be something in the order of 31-30. I think this could be one of those games where whoever has the ball last is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the defining factor of this game will be Baylor's ability to throw the ball down the field, and it is the Achilles heel of that BYU defense, in my opinion. So I'm going to take Baylor 31-30. It's a loss, but a cover and an over for BYU, Jake.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so I'm going the other way. I think that BYU is more than capable of winning this game, but I think what it's going to take is a really clean game, a really disciplined effort. So I don't just mean the turnovers. I'm talking about no turnovers, correct ball placement from Jaren when he's throwing the football to allow his receivers to run after the catch, right, to make plays. And that's what I'm going to be looking for. And yeah, the defense is going to have to play good. You cannot have any missed assignments or 70-yard over the top touchdown passes. So to me, specifically, on offense, what I'm going to be looking for is Tyler Algier to get back to who he's been. This is the kind of game where you need Tyler Algier to run for 100 really physical yards and really punish Baylor. So to me, I'm going to take a risk and say BYU is going to win the game. I think it's going to take 35 points. I think it's going to take at least 100 yards out of Tyler Algier.
100. If they're going to win and they're going to score 35, he better run for 150 to 180.
Well,
because 100 yards ain't going to get it done.
Well, here's why I think 100 is the number. If you can be over 100, anything over 100 is icing on the cake, because this Baylor defense is going to be good. But I just think that when you're playing a good defense, if Tyler Algier can get to 100 yards in this game, that tells me that BYU's offensive line is doing work, which should theoretically mean that Jaren Hall is having a nice game, right? Because he's got protection, he has time, and he's making good decisions. So to me, I agree with you on the point total. I do think this is going to be a low 30s, really tight game. But to me, I like BYU like 35, 31, that kind of a game. That's if they're going to win it, that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think there's two things. Baylor doesn't run the ball exceptionally well, but they run it well enough. They don't stop the run exceptionally well, but they stop the run well enough. And when you talk about keys to success like Tyler Algier, it's got to be with Jaren Hall. If Jaren Hall is not a threat to run the ball, Tyler Algier is going to have a very difficult day. Because Dave Aranda is a lot of things, but he is a defensive guru. And this is a guy who understands how to scheme.
Yes.
And if you want to beat BYU, you stop the run. You make Jaren Hall throw the ball, and you stop Tyler Algier from having a 150-yard day. That's going to be one of the defining stats in this game. And I think Tyler probably gets right to or just short of 150 yards. And I think they lose. I think if you're watching on TV Saturday, that's one of the stats you can look up. Does Tyler Algier break 150 yards? That's why we won. I wish I could say that he was going to. I don't think he will. I can't believe that Jaren Hall is 100%. There were all these reports that Jaren Hall's 100%. We were hearing that a week ago the guy couldn't throw a football.
Yeah.
And that they did what they did to get him through the game against Boise, which was where you're not going to run at all and you're going to throw the ball. Threw it for 300 yards. I'm telling you, this kid has to run for 60, 70 yards a game.
Yeah.
Or Tyler Algier is a far, far less effective weapon.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge factor here. My mind is Jaren Hall's not healthy, and I don't think he's going to run. I think he might be 70, 80%. He's not going to run. That's the thing that stands out to me. I'll be interested. Tomorrow at 1:30, I will have my eyes glued on the set.
Yep.
Because I think this is a season-defining game for BYU. I'm going to go 31-30 Baylor. Let's get some of your comments in here. Gabe Ladley, good morning to you. Brylark says, morning, boys. CJ says, morning, beating 3 P5 teams to start the season defined it. No, it didn't.
No, I don't think so, dude.
That is, and again, I understand you're a diehard BYU guy. The 3 wins that you had to start the season are meaningless. They mean nothing, especially now that you lost to Boise. Those wins are significantly less. You have 4 P5 teams right in front of you, and those are games that are going to define this game. This game tomorrow is going to define your season.
Yeah,
I mean, and then it's going to be Washington State, and then it's going to be Virginia, and then it's going to be USC, and on and on and on. And every week, that's the plight of an independent team. And it's great that you have the Idaho States of the world in there, but those games are tune-ups. Those games do not define seasons. Baylor on the road, when I think the last time BYU went to Baylor was 1983 and they lost the season opener. Baylor on the road's a big game, especially with Grimey there and that relationship.
Yep.
With all due respect, I can't agree with that. Cody Strickland says, Eagles had a chance to win last night. Too bad that showboating is a real problem in the league. Number 58 caused them the game, in my opinion. Could be. Eric C. says, can't wait to see San Diego State ranked higher than BYU after this weekend. I don't know about that. San Diego State's a good, not great program. And
they're a nice little story every year.
They are.
They
are. Daryl says BYU's score is either of the first 2 drives and the game is going their way. Well, that's going to be important. That is going to be important. I think it is. I think one of those things, and we say it here on the Monty Show all the time. It's one of those things where perception is usually not reality, only it is to an AP voter.
Right.
Right? I mean, if BYU beats Baylor, they'll be back in the top 15.
Yeah.
If they lose, they're out of the top 25. That's the plight of being a BYU Cougar fan. That just is what it is. Greasy Hands Auto Sean Butterfield. Okay. Says, A-Rod said in his press conference that Jaren is 100%. There's no chance. How is Jaren Hall, who has had rib and shoulder issues, who could not run the football?
Legit.
Last weekend. Have you ever seen Jaren Hall play that kind of football? How is he just miraculously 5 days later 100%? Come on. I think we all know better than that. Marty, you are Marty.
Hello.
Marty, you are spot on with your depth comment. Why have it if it's shelved?
I agree.
Who's Marty?
I don't know who Marty is.
Read the rest, Monty. We wouldn't have done that under Bronco or Kalani starting out. Right, but with all due respect, CJ, I just don't think Bronco or Kalani matter. Right? Old Kalani doesn't matter. It's 2021, and you are in the Big 12. every game that you play is a proving ground. And the reality is BYU isn't here to go to the Pool and Weed Eater Bowl. They're here to play on New Year's in a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah.
So when you're a one-loss team and you've got 4 P5s right in front of you, what you did behind you doesn't matter. With all due respect, I mean, those are good wins. That's it. Arguably the greatest weekend in the history of BYU football was beating Utah after getting into the Big 12. I mean, it was a huge moment in time. But it's October 16th, and this is a huge day in Baylor.
Yeah.
At Baylor, rather, in Waco. You've got to go and beat the ghost of David Koresh
Koresh.
and the Waco Wackos, and you got to do your job.